Welcome back to this episode of Adventures with Annie Peguero. Don't forget to go over to my website at anniepeguero.com and sign up for my masterclass, Service-Based to Thousands. This is the Adventures with Annie Peguero podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping badass women get out of your comfort zone and into alignment with your soul's purpose. You are going to find these episodes valuable and transformational. Thank you for listening. Before we get into this episode, I want to thank this show's sponsor, Sarah Carter with New You Coaching. If you don't have Sarah Carter's book, How to Make Successful Life Changes, you need to go and grab that right away. It's over on Amazon. Sarah was a Navy pilot flying some of the most exciting planes for the United States Navy, and she left that career to become a military spouse and mom. So to talk about change, Sarah is a total expert. She walks you through steps and questions to ask yourself when making any type of change in your life. It doesn't have to be a big earth-shattering one. It can even just be the smallest changes that maybe you've been sitting on for years. Sarah's book, All About Change, is very insightful. It's available on Amazon and also on Sarah's website. In today's episode, I have the absolute honor of introducing you to my coach, which I've never had my own coach on my podcast before, so this is very exciting, Elizabeth Ralph. Elizabeth is known as the Spiritual Investor. She's the creator of a program called The Spiritual Investor, which Albert and I joined back in July of 2021. After having some of the most challenging times in our marriage in 2019 and 2020. As you know, if you've been here with me for a bit, we almost separated. It was a huge struggle, living in Japan, being so isolated, and just really falling out of communication, out of rapport with each other, and away from our desires as a couple and individual. So after seeing many different therapists, counselors, talk therapy, all the things, we still had some things that we needed to work through. And most of it involved our finances. We felt behind. We felt like we didn't have enough knowledge, and talk therapy was not going to help us with that. And then it was like as if it was magic. I was on Instagram and I came across Elizabeth's account, and she was talking about connecting your spirituality to your money. And I have literally been working on, changing my money vibe from you have to work super hard for your money to money flows easily to me. Just getting into some different money mantras and doing some visualization and things like that. And that was all fine and good, but I still wasn't able to see that change in my bank account, see that change in we didn't even have any investments. We had Al's retirement, etc., but we were not actively investing our money in stocks because we outside of his military investments, because we just didn't feel knowledgeable enough. We felt inadequate. We felt like, that was for somebody else. After hiring Elizabeth, we experienced a tremendous shift. We became investors. We became active in our wealth building. We connected our spiritual journey and our energy to our money, and we no longer had that nervous system response of getting sweaty palms, heart racing fast when money became the topic, and definitely no more fighting about it. To say that it has helped our marriage would be an understatement. I mean, just so incredibly beautiful, and I'm so grateful. That was a long introduction, but I felt like I really needed to go into why I'm introducing Elizabeth to you, and just the importance and the magnitude of the change that's happened in our life and marriage since working with her. And then sharing from Elizabeth's bio, she says that most people have not lived in the way that they want because they've been under this spell that freedom is something you're given, not something that you actively define. So she was inspired by a chance encounter on a beach in Australia. She decided to break this spell when a kangaroo hopped onto the edge of her beach towel and plucked a Cheeto from her hand. I mean, seriously, can you imagine? So she thought, if this wild animal could go against every natural instinct and create its own version of freedom, then why couldn't everyone? So a few weeks later, Elizabeth flew back to San Diego, and despite having spent 11 years on a high-security trading floor in what would have been considered a dream job for people in finance, she knew it was time to walk away. But finance was her language and a puzzle that she craved to solve. She loved it, so she wanted to still be immersed in the financial world, but not working on that high-stress trading floor. She gave herself the greatest financial challenge of all, and it was to buy her way out of ever having to work again and do it in just 10 years. So imagine, like, she's super excited, and it carried her through, but after about 3 years into this decade-long plan, she found herself lying on the floor, depressed and unable to see the way forward. Then, like literally out of nowhere, an Indian spiritual guru appeared at her workplace, carrying like arms full of books, yellowed with sage, and his laughter became her medicine. Suddenly, the world around her took on a new meaning, and she didn't need to analyze the financial markets anymore. From this greater point of awareness, she could literally feel what the market was about to do. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this sounds amazing, I would love to feel into my finances, feel into my money, this is definitely for you. So if you're in our circles in person, you know that Al and I have been talking about Elizabeth and our journey with her for the last several months. So this is a really great opportunity for you to go a little bit deeper and also sign up for Elizabeth's free wealth building series, which is going on right now. Right now, it's the week of February 22nd. So I'll have the link in my show notes. The link is www.bit.ly/spiritual investor. You can go there and sign up for the free training series and learn more about Elizabeth's work and the program that we went through. So I know that I talked a lot right there, but I really wanted to paint a picture of how important this work has and this shift has been in our life. So here we go, the episode with Elizabeth Ralph, spiritual investor. So it's an absolutely beautiful day. My daffodils are coming up, and my client had a dream that she was bit by a snake. And we're going to share with you like why that is significant. But today I'm so very thrilled and honored to share with you, my podcast listeners, my very own coach that Al and I have been working with for the past 6 months inside of her spiritual investor program. Welcome, 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 Elizabeth Ralph.
Oh, God, thank you so much. It's amazing to get to hang out with you again.
It is. And we like started to chat at the beginning. I'm like, let's not chat. Like, I don't even want to say anything without it being recorded, because there's so much. And I am really so honored to have you on my podcast, to introduce you to my community. So many amazing people, a lot of military families that I feel like if they would meet you, everything would shift for them quickly. So
that's so meaningful. Honored. That is so meaningful. God, thank you so much for like allowing us to expand this, right, and sort of come on here and have this co-creative process of your experience, which is carrying all the energy of this to so many people, like you say, that because it's a way of thinking, isn't it?
It really is. And I think that, in the past, before working with you, I thought I was in a vibe of abundance because I was a manifester, because I was a positive thinker and I was allowing, and I felt like I was really doing and being a person who was embodying wealth building. And it wasn't until we really dove in together that I was like, I'm so happy that I'm doing this. I don't even want to say work, because it kind of just came through us. So let me back up. So I'm going to have Elizabeth introduce herself, but what I feel like is very, very important to say, when Al and I first started working with Elizabeth back in July, Elizabeth, you didn't know that we were having the marriage struggles that we had, which I feel like was kind of unfair for you. I'm like, here we are, ready for you to help us. And what really happened was such a beautiful like facilitation of growth for us, because we had already been to so many counselors and therapists and other marriage coaches, but what we didn't have was that spiritual connection to ourself and what we were building, which was, our life together, and the biggest source of our arguments, which was money. So that being said, thank you, okay, a million times for, taking us both on.
You're so welcome. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And you and Al are so different too, which has been really fun for me to sort of like, see the merging of you two. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. So I did introduce you here like in the beginning, but just share with us about you, who you are, why you do what you do.
Yeah, well, I guess the big thing is I definitely merged spirituality and money, but we do it from a place of, like you had mentioned, manifestation. So a lot of people kind of get stuck in that. I would say it's a circular kind of thing with manifestation, about, a lot about the money vibe, and it feels really good and all that. And I love that stuff too, right? But then what happens is like 3-6 months later, you're like, uh-oh, where's the money? The money's not in my bank account, right? And so the space that I play in is that the combination of spirituality and money. And the reason that I do it is because I was a financial person. And so, I worked on a trading floor as an energy trader for a lot of years, and it was great. But I decided I didn't want to do it forever. So I was like, well, I'm just going to buy my way out of this. I didn't want to like transition out of it and go down to zero income. I wanted to do it sort of gradually. And so I put a financial strategy together. I was in my early 30s at that point. And then it was 10 years, but then I ended up meeting it in 8. So at 39, I retired early and basically had my cost of living covered with investing. And so that's basically like your mortgage, your bills, like things like that. And then, so I just really felt better about the whole transition. And I always knew my why was I wanted to help horses. And I sort of felt like, let me get myself out of the way so I can do more. And I know everybody, your listeners, they all have their why, but a lot of times we feel like, oh, I don't have time to do it. It's going to cost too much money. And they get stuck in that area, of that. And so I teach people how to start from exactly where you are now, because it's more important to start now and then open up the possibilities and sort of let the universe like help you weave this and bring all the magic into it. And I get started now. So that's how I ended up with the Spiritual Investor Program, and now teaching people about money and getting to work with amazing people like you. And it's a dream. It is literally a dream. I'm like, how do I get to do this? And now I have a team that's like, they're so amazing, and they like keep me on track with everything, it's just, yeah, I'm really pinching myself. And I live on a horse ranch. So, I go from like sitting in meetings to out to the stalls. I was just out there taking blankets off of horses. So it's kind of just like real life,
It's like, is this really my life? I mean, I was texting with your assistant, Leanne, who's amazing, this morning. And I said to her that like literally every single day, Al and I it's mostly Al that says this, which is pretty cool given, just what has happened in our lives, in our marriage over the last couple of years. He's like, our life is amazing. Like, I literally can't believe we're living this life. Like, what? And like to hear him say that when we were in such a dark place, we just didn't know where to turn, like where to get help. We're like, is this really our life? So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty spectacular feeling to know that even though we didn't know the how, just like, one of the big things that you talk about all the time on your podcast in the Spiritual Investor Program, it's like, we don't know how the thing is going to happen. Like, just have the vision, have the feelings. And can you talk a little bit about that? So you said that you had a 10-year plan. You had the steps to get there. You knew how you were going to get there. You were a financial person, so you kind of had the things in place already. But I know that at 3 years, you were like, oh my gosh, can I really do this? Like, there was a real stress and depression set in. So tell us about that. Because I think that a lot of my listeners might say something like, well, okay, you did that in your early 30s, like it's too late for me. Or, okay, it worked out for you because you knew how to do this because you're a financial person, but I just wouldn't even know where to begin. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. Such a great question. Well, I had a big aha moment. Sometimes you go on vacation or sometimes you're just out of your element. That's part of the problem is we get into these routines and life just goes by and we're like, uh-oh, where did that year go? Or, oh my gosh, your kid's 3 now already or something. And so, I had this moment where I was like, you know what? I really am ready to just shift my entire life. And then after that, I ended up seeing a horrendous horse video and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. But you're right. There is this point where you're like, but wait, how's this all going to fit in? And how's this going to work? Well, I did have obviously the background, the financial background. So I was able to put the strategy together. It is the same exact strategy that I teach inside of the program. Which I kind of like because I'm like, okay, I didn't read it out of a book. It actually does work, right? There's a certain element of that, right? So, but then, you know what? I got depressed year 3. And so I could have, I guess my point here is I could have known how to do all of the numbers and still not achieved it. So I want to point that out because for people who feel like that's the only limiting factor, don't let that stop you. So, I was on track for the numbers. I was making my goals and everything, but I was like, this is just I can't do this. It's because we're not motivated by an amount of money in an account. We think we will be, but we're really not because it's disconnected from us. The money has to have a reason. It has to have a why. And so even though I knew it was about horses, I hadn't really integrated that the way that I could have. And then I ended up meeting this spiritual guy who joined the group. And he kept giving me all these books from India. And I was like, wait, they're yellowed pages and they have Indian guys with the half sheet on. And he and I would laugh. I'm like, can't they wear clothes? Can somebody give them a shirt? Why do they have to,
Yeah.
Of course, it was the greatest wisdom beaming down, right? And so he kept explaining all this stuff to me over and over and over again. And it was this spiritual kind of infusion. And I started feeling better and I started feeling happier, kind of what you described with Al. I started being happy in my life. And that was when I was like, oh, wait. My money is supposed to be part of this world. I'm not supposed to have a spiritual journey and feel really good and happy. And then all of a sudden in the next breath be like, oh, well, that's expensive, or I can't afford that, or worry about paying the bills or things like that. That's just all resistance. And once you understand that money's energy, you can bring all of that together. As soon as that happened, it was like lightning speed. Everything fell into place. I mean, in a way that I could not have actually planned it. So as much as you have a plan, I always encourage, especially creative people, to know that money is creative. And just because you have a structure does not mean you're stuck to a budget. It does not mean that you have to do without and you're not going to get to go and do it. No, having a structure is actually allows you the freedom to leave the past behind, to forgive yourself, to know you've done the best damn job that you could do up to this point, and now it's about creating new. And that structure is what allows your creativity and your intuition to come rushing in. And that's how you collapse time. Like for people who think they're behind, like you mentioned, you might be behind based on linear time, which is what your mind has created. Money doesn't speak linear time. And once you start speaking money's language, you are literally outside of time.
I think that's just really kind of mind-blowing for a lot of our listeners that have never really embraced that kind of concept before, and who might have this be their first kind of exposure to linking money and spirituality. So thank you for explaining it like that. I wrote down so many things and like all these questions and things that came up for me, but one thing I want to make sure I say right away is that where you're talking about, once you open up to that energy and to that flow, more of the flow comes towards you. And just a real life example of that, my program, Soul School, just closed. One of my new students purchased the program, and the very same week that she purchased the program, that same 4 figures came back to her, the same exact amount. And we're on our call yesterday, and she's like, I want to be like mind blown, but of course it happened that way. I invested in myself. I invested in my growth and my business. And I'm like, this is what Elizabeth teaches. Like this is happening in real time, in real life. So I just wanted to share like a real life example of how it really does happen so magically and easily, effortlessly.
It does. All of this stuff that we're talking about today, it gets easy. It gets really easy, and it starts to become an integrated part of your life. It's not something outside of you. It feels like that at first, right? Remember when we first got started, it's like, okay, we'll have to do this and I have to kind of set this up kind of thing. But that's a very brief moment. And the amount of value that you get for the rest of your lifetime, making decisions in a superior way about money and approaching life as an investor and living through your why. I mean, it's indescribable, the difference, you know?
I think, for several years now, we've been hearing, really connect with your why. What, your why, if your why doesn't make you cry, it's not strong enough. I remember hearing that and I was like, well, I'm not crying. Like I feel very attached to my why and the reason why I'm sharing my gifts with the world, but I'm not over here crying about it, So I felt like that a lot of people were saying like your why has to be this big thing. And if it's not, then you need to find a new why. And that kind of struck me like, I think it caused people to really stop looking for that internal motivation and they were looking externally for these, reinforcers and things like that in their life. So, what would you say to somebody who is like, I just don't know if my why is big enough. Like, I just don't know if it's meaningful enough.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing is, if we're looking for how strong our why is, then we have to ask ourselves, why is our why so tied to our self-identity? Because when we're comparing anything, then we're bumping up against like our own interpretation of it, right? And so your why is not part of your self-identity. Your why is something that drives you and makes you excited. And if you are comparing your why, then you're also going to go to a whole other level with, is it good enough? Am I a good enough person? Because sometimes people's why is they just don't want to work in the job that they're in. Sometimes people's why is they want to live in $1 million home. It does not matter. The why, the purpose of the why is so that it's the difference in throwing an arrow at a target versus throwing an arrow at a wall. And you're going to get there a lot faster if you have a why. So I would say to people, just choose whatever feels strongly for you right now. Like literally listen to this, pause this after this, and just write down, if you were on stage right now and had a microphone and someone said, what's your why? What would it be? And then don't judge yourself on it. Just kind of go with that. Also, no one's going to throw you in jail if you find a new why either. And you're better off, like a year down the track having, again, throwing the target against the wall, because what it also allows you to do is that, it allows you to sort of narrow down the choices as well. So someone sent me a message yesterday and they're like, I have $10,000. What should I invest in? And I've gotten that question. I can't tell you how many times. It's a great question, but you can't answer that without your why. That's exactly like if someone said to you, Annie, what car should I buy? You're like, well, what are you using for? How many kids do you have? What do you like to drive? What color do you like? So do you see how when you have your why, then you've narrowed down the scope of the choices. So you also don't feel like you have to figure everything out either, because that's how the universe is sort of helping you and sort of guiding you. But, if you don't say what your why is, then how is the universe going to know what the heck you want? So, it's our job to sort of turn on the light in the middle of the night.
It is. It is. It's our job to recognize that and to take even the smallest steps, because one of the big things that I like to say and talk about, like my passion is action, right? Like I'm an action taker and I'm an action igniter. I always have been. But sometimes action looks like literally doing nothing. It looks like going out into my yard and like picking up leaves and like smelling them and like just laying in the ground. That's what action looks like. And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in this, like being busy, taking action, making things happen, being the person who does the things, that we get kind of lost in the everyday. So that I think that your whole explanation, everything that you just talked about, really brings us back to our intuition, our heart, and what's important to ourselves. Before I met you randomly on Instagram, right before I joined your program, which, by the way, I didn't know who you were. I didn't do any research about you. I Googled you. That's what I did. I Googled you. But I joined your program like immediately, because I just knew in my heart that I knew you were the one. I knew you were the one for us. And I very much feel that is important, so for others, when when people kind of waffle, they know that it feels right, but they're just not sure. I always say, well, what is it? Does it feel right? If it feels right, then yeah, you want to be in this program. You want to get help from this person, because we'll be honest, like there's other life and business strategists out there. There's other financial people out there that are mixing spirituality and business, and investing, but nobody delivers it quite like you. Nobody delivers it as you do. So when somebody feels that connection, I always say, please go with it. Like, you've got to go with it, But my point was, like, before, so probably in like 2017 or 2018, when I was really realizing my own money vibe and, why I was like having these launches, and I had a really great program, but I was always ending up broke. Like I would earn money and then I would give it away right away. And the very first thing that I started to do was recognize my own speak, like the things that were coming out of my mouth. Like, I was saying things like, we can't afford that, or that's too expensive, or maybe when we leave Okinawa, or like maybe when Al retires, or if I could get a job and not have to market myself, like all of those things came to the surface for me. And, obviously it was, many years later where I met you and started to have like a more intense journey with our finances. But I think even that awareness, like you say in your podcast, you've already in the video series that people are already on a journey if they've found you, if they started listening to your videos and your podcast. So to somebody who is kind of like stuck in the wheels spinning, like maybe they have dabbled in investing a little bit, they really might feel like they don't have the knowledge. Like, what is the next step? Like, what is the next step for somebody like that?
Yeah. So I get the question. Probably the most common question that I get is what is the next step for investing? And, and it's kind of exactly what you asked, really. And, a lot of this is that we have to look at, I would say most of us have been raised by parents or grandparents or someone who had some kind of not the greatest relationship with money, right? Or some kind of scarcity or some kind of something, right? So if you go out there and you just sort of like start investing, right, which you can easily do. And I would encourage people, like there's so many free apps out there and things like that. But there is a reason that people start investing and then get bored with it or fall off or lose their password or their login or whatever. They're not actually connected with like the investment. So they don't have a relationship with that money that's actually coming in. So, from the program, I always teach, like, for every dollar that comes in, what percentage are you going to then turn that into money that works for you, right? So because they actually aren't connected to the energetic flow of that money, it still remains like way, way out there. And it's kind of like the friend that you want to meet on Friday night for dinner, and you always show up late, or you don't show up at all. And then like you don't call, and then you're like, oh, but I need you to be there for me when I need you, right? Like money is a relationship. Money is energy. And so while I do encourage people to sort of, like take action, as you said, I also want people to understand that money is a practice. Money isn't something that you do. And so you have to actually sort of shift your thinking a bit into money being a practice if you actually want to turn investing into building wealth, which is what most people want. And then, so I hope that makes sense, because I'm trying to sort of also save people from going out there and doing something that they just get frustrated with and they don't understand and they walk away from. Because when we do things and we don't feel successful, it puts us further down the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, many of my listeners here are like share the same thought process as me, is that I'll just avoid it, just complete avoidance. Yeah. And I'll go in there when I have to. And, I'll stop saying that things are too expensive. I'll shift that type of talk and energy, but I'll still avoid it. Right. Like with our taxes. Oh my goodness. Like the past few, I've never been like on time and excited about it as I am right now. Like I'm in the QuickBooks. I'm excited. I'm like communicating with the accountant, and it feels amazing and new and exciting. And I'm like, who is this person in this skin of mine? Like it just feels so good.
And you know what it is? It's not because like you're just loving looking at money or loving QuickBooks or something. It's the clarity of it, right? It's I know what's happening, because we're always afraid of the unknown. And so there's that element when you're avoiding it, there's always the what if, or is there going to be enough, or all of that. That is the first step in investing, actually, is to really, really get clear with that side of it, because Otherwise, you subconsciously are still going to continue to push money away, and people are going to feel that. See, that's the thing. Like, people are already feeling your money vibe now. You just don't know it because your money vibe is normalized. And so for entrepreneurs out there, people are picking up on your money vibe. Believe that. And the more that you bring your money in and get that clarity with it, what you just described, the more money you're going to make. It absolutely happens every single time.
It does. One final thing that I want to touch on, it's, like a core, part of the spiritual investor program, like a pillar, I guess I would say, of it is that, it's not an either or, like living in the moment or planning for the future. And like, for us, I didn't see how that was even possible. I just didn't even see. And I remember it was probably like a month into our working together with you. Now, Al and I joined Spiritual Investor Pro. So we worked one-on-one with you for a call every other week for 6 months. And what you said to us, you said, you pulled up the numbers, like you made the Excel spreadsheet. That's not my language. That's Al. So he loved that. And you're like, listen, like, this looks fantastic. Like, look at your retirement. Look what's going to happen when you retire from the military and you have, whatever job it is. And we were kind of like, wow, like, really? And then you said, so you can be stressed out and worried and feeling away if you want to right now. You'll be miserable and you could feel crappy now if you want to, or you can be excited and recognize, yeah, you built this. You are wealth builders and look at what's going to happen. And that was a real mind blowing moment for both of us because we just didn't realize how far along we already were.
Yep. Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up because it happens when you really, really look at what you have and you sort of put it all in perspective. You put all the pieces on the table. Most people are further along than they feel, but they have beat themselves up about, I should have started 5 years ago, or they beat themselves up about debt, or they beat themselves up about not knowing what to do next, that becomes the dominant feeling. And that is like swimming with a backpack of rocks on. And as soon as you take that backpack off, it's like, oh my gosh, like everything, your whole outlook changes. And when your outlook changes, you start seeing new opportunities, making decisions in a different way, right? And you guys, I mean, it's just like, it was such a joy to me that your relationship improved over it. I mean, God.
That was a really big deal. And, like I said, that we were no strangers to therapy and counselors. Like, we very much wanted to get help, but we didn't know how to manage our money and how to get into a vibration of feeling really awesome about money. Like, we were still having that nervous system response when we were talking about money, and we knew we wanted that to go away, but we didn't know how to heal that. We didn't know how to talk about it. We just felt like we didn't know enough. Like it was investing was for somebody else. We have his military retirement and that's enough type thing. Mm-hmm. So what it did for our relationship, I mean, we talk about the spiritual investor program and working with you to like, people who are listening, people who are not listening, people who are already in other programs, because it was really just a holistic experience for us. It wasn't just building wealth. It was, so much a blessing to our marriage. I mean, remarkable. Thank you so much.
Oh, God, thank you. It's amazing. Like I said, it's a dream.
So good.
It's one of those things as well where like you guys you'll go through it over and over again as well, right? Because a lot of people do that. They stay in it. And we have people who've gone through it 6 times now because they use it as a structure for their life, and even though you and I worked one-on-one with you guys, like you guys will go through the group coaching calls and stuff now, hopefully, and
oh yeah.
It's the energy of it, isn't it? And people don't realize that when you stay in the energy of anything, that's really what we're trying to do here is we're like, whatever we want to do, whatever we want to achieve, just find the energy of it and move towards it and immerse yourself in it and let the universe to decide for you. That's the environment that I want to create, you know, and I'm always working on it. It's a journey for me as well, you know. But I so appreciate your.
Oh yeah. I mean, you definitely have created that, you know, and that's so important. I know even in like business, like entrepreneur groups, and when I was just starting out on my entrepreneur journey, like back in 2011, I'm like, I want to be the dumbest person in the room. Like, I don't want to know anything about this stuff. I want to go in there. I want to be like the newbie person, whatever, so I can just absorb the energy. But when it came to money, I would just run. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be in the room. Like, I feel dumb. And that so weird, you know, like it was something that, you know, and now that we have daughters, we know that we can teach them better, and we already are. We know that we're teaching them better. We know that talking about money is important and should come naturally. So, oh my gosh, just so huge. I think that
be amazing for them.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, we're so grateful.
Yeah.
Tell us, where can people find you? How can they sign up for your video series? And if they're listening to this later, tell us about the Spiritual Investor Program. Tell us all the places that people can find you.
Yeah, well, definitely. You'll have the link, right? You'll have the link here in the show notes. So I would say follow that. That's the easiest possible thing to do. And the wealth building series. So yeah, depending on when you're listening to this. So the first video came out on the 22nd, 2/2/2/2/2, right? Of course, you know, I had to release it on that day. And I have gotten, oh my gosh, so many messages. I told people, I'm like, put video series in the beginning of it because I got to bubble that to the top, you know? So definitely do that. And then, video 2 dropped today. So video 1 is all about, your money consciousness and how you bridge the gap between spirituality and money. And video 2 today, I show you actual numbers. I take like a side by side of 2 people who start in the same place with the same amount of money. And by the way, it's not a lot of money. I don't want people thinking that they need $1 million business to do this because, you know, that's not true. You can start from where you are. So it's giving people actual numbers so they can really see what this all looks like. And then video 3 drops tomorrow, which would be the 24th. And that is going to be investing and just like really, really shifting people into thinking like the wealthy. And so all 3 parts go together. All 3 parts also mimic kind of, you know, the way that the Spiritual Investor Program is laid out is you don't just come in and it's like all of a sudden you're like diving in a spreadsheet and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to stop buying the clothes that I like, right? No, we're not about that. We're all from a place of abundance and forgiveness and, you know, we really, really start. Money neutrality is a huge thing because money is very tied to your self-identity. So we help you disconnect that. We help you actually have a brand new relationship with money that you're creating from who you are now, from the person that you have evolved into. And you have worked on yourself. You have come on a journey. Like bring your money and start from there with your money. And so that's the beginning of the program. And then after that, we shift you into the clarity piece of it, looking at your cash in, cash out kind of stuff. And then we shift you into investing, which is basically like, how do you amplify money? You know, because we're a conduit for money. We are not a receiver of money. People get that wrong. Like, we're not an end for money. We're a conduit. So it's like the money consciousness, sort of like, you know, I have my hands up by my head for you guys listening to it. It comes in the top, that's the money consciousness. And then the clarity sort of goes through and then it comes out and it amplifies. And that's what we're here for. We're here to amplify and to take care of other people, take care of loved ones, you know, help horses or whatever it is that you want. the more that you make yourself a conduit, the more money will flow through you. But it's just like you said, there's more to it than just feeling good about money.
Yes.
You actually have to create that channel. If you're not creating that channel, then money is energy, like electricity. Electricity flows where it's called. So if you don't have that investing account, if you don't have that action plan for that money is going to choose someone else. And it happens over and over again. You can feel as good and warm and fuzzy as you want about money, but if you don't give it the container, it has nowhere to go. You know, it's like pouring water on the ground. So that's really, you know, kind of what we're all about, is like bringing it all together for people. Then they're off to the races, literally.
Yeah.
Then they don't need me anymore after that, because once they do that, they're thinking different. And that's kind of the point too, is that, you know, a lot of people think that they have to pay this ongoing fee to have people manage money, and that ends up costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we teach you how to do this yourself, you know, save that hundreds of thousands for you and your family to buy a second home. You know, don't spend it on the belief that you can't do this, you know?
I love it. And the point of, maybe you're already feeling like you are a wealth builder, that you are doing really great with your investments, etc. Now having this new spiritual connection that maybe you didn't really recognize before, and then being able to kind of relearn and reabsorb everything that you already have done up into to this point with your money and with your wealth building, to be able to look at it through a new lens with new energy. That is, it's everything, you know? So when you say like, yeah, like Al and I will be able to go back through the program as like different. The same people, but much different than we were when we went through it the first time just 6 months ago. So, and then, you know, I have to bring up Kundalini yoga, because the very first time I was exposed to Kundalini yoga was 2006. Okay. And in 2006, I'm with my friend Kal Khalsa, who I introduced you to on Instagram, at her this yoga studio where she would go in LA. And I'm doing the fire breathing and I'm doing some movement like this. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I'm like, I got to get out of this room. You know, this is not for me. Like, I feel like this is too intense. Like, things were starting to come up for me, and I'm like, it's not for me. And I didn't look at anything related to Kundalini yoga again until, I want to say, just in the last couple of years. So I'm the same human being. I just wasn't ready for it then. I wasn't able to welcome it and make it part of my life. So just like anything, like it's never too late for you to start looking at your money in a different way and really bringing in that spiritual part of it. I mean, we need to do a part 2. Like, this is, I know. I feel like there's just so much. Maybe I think that we should do something special for military families. I think, because I was thinking of that today when I was making dinner, and I'm like, wow, this would be, because that's when the good ideas come, when you're not like doing anything, right?
Not trying to think about them.
It does, yeah. So I think that I would love to chat about that. I think that would be really special. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Elizabeth. This has been just so wonderful.
Yes. And so anyone who wants to learn more about this, you're going to have a link for them. If they want to find me on Instagram, it's just my first and last name at Elizabeth Ralph, and definitely put in there, Annie's name, military, anything like that, just so I know kind of like, the vibe of kind of where you're coming from and all of that. Plus, like I say, you put Annie's name in there or military, then we'll kind of like know where to suss you out. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys though. And I'd love questions, and send Annie questions too. So that I would love to put something together and help, military families, because, I've learned a lot about it through you guys. And so why not share some of the information? Because, it's like you guys are already giving back in such a huge way. And if I can help you guys, and I mean, it would really be an honor. Seriously.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. This was so much fun. I could talk forever. I got to get the girls to soccer. It's been really great. Remember, go over, follow Elizabeth on Instagram. And then I'll give you the link in the show notes to find out more about the Spiritual Investor Program. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
What a beautiful episode. It was such an honor to share Elizabeth with you. I encourage you to go over to, here's the web address, bit.ly/spiritual investor, and sign up for Elizabeth's totally free complementary wealth building series. It's a 3-part series. It's only going to be available until the end of this week, so February 25th. And it's the launch of her Spiritual Investor Program. So I would love if you join the program. If you choose not to join at this time, at least you know about it now, and it might be something for you the next time she opens up the program. And that website, again, it'll be in my show notes and on my Instagram and on my Facebook. But if you're listening here, it's bit.ly/spiritual investor. I trust this episode was super meaningful for you and valuable. Please go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a written review. Written reviews mean so much for the podcast, so much to Elizabeth and I, so you could cite this episode and just share your thoughts about it. Also, we love to see screenshots. So most people listen to podcasts on your phone, so just snap a screenshot and put it in your Instagram story or Facebook story or post, like wherever you want, and just tag me. It's Annie Peguero _ on Instagram, and tag Elizabeth Ralph on Instagram too. That would mean so much. And another thank you to our sponsor for this show, Sarah Carter. Sarah Carter's book, How to Make Successful Life Changes, is available on Instagram and also on her website, inwiththenewYou.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot. So at the beginning of this episode, I shared about snakes, right? I shared about how a client of mine she had a dream that she was bitten by a snake. And I said that was super significant, and I would explain why in the episode. Well, I completely forgot. I got so into what Elizabeth and I were talking about, I forgot to share about that. So Elizabeth and I were on one of our coaching calls, and during the call, I really had some mega shifts. Like really letting go of an old thought process that I had been holding on to about money and my business, and just, stories that I was holding on to. Well, she helped me to reframe that and to really let go of these thought patterns that I kept repeating. So I always, after having a kind of shift like that, I always like to go outside and pick up the leaves or pick up dirt and kind of like smell it and hug trees and be outside and really connect that tangible and that the senses to experiencing a shift. So it's a brain-based strategy and technique that I teach inside of Soul School, to just really have that physical connection to a shift. So I did that after a call with her. And then as I was walking back in my house, because I still had some more work to do, I see a snake. And I had never seen a snake in my front yard before, like only like buried in the leaves in the back or whatever. But this snake was like wrapped up in our shrubbery in my front yard. And it was like just in plain view, just looking at me. And I sat there and I just stared at this snake for a while. And I'm like, okay, I see you. What is this message? I thought that a snake was there to share about change and transformation. And then I came in and Googled it, and I was right. And I just really saw that as a huge, huge sign from the universe, from God, from spirit, from my guides that were telling me I was on the right track. I always love those external signs. And that sure was one of them, from a beautiful snake, a beautiful spirit animal. So this week, it was our first week in Soul School when one of my clients, Elena Yoakum, she's an amazing, amazing artist and has some brand new, beautiful offerings that she's sharing, art classes and design strategies, she came to our call and she said, I don't know what's going on. Like, I had this dream that a snake bit me. And I am like grinning and cheering. And I'm so happy that she had this snake bite in her dream, because I knew that it was a sign for her, that it was a spirit animal coming to her to represent the tremendous change that was happening in real time in her life. And Elizabeth recently had an encounter with a hawk. So if you are on Instagram, go over to Instagram, follow Elizabeth's stories, and look at her feed where she talks about this hawk that she saved from being wrapped up in a fence. And it's so amazing how animals are sent to us in times where we need to have that external sign or that external message given there to bring a message to us. So just pretty cool. And I want you to take a look at your life where, maybe an animal showed up for you and you weren't quite sure why it was there. Drop me a message on Instagram. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear about your experience with spirit animals and receiving messages from animals. Okay, that's it. That's all I have for you, and I'll talk with you next time. Thanks so much.